And he said 99% of your question is encompassed by the question, what do you think of NVIDIA? And everything else is the 1%. And I think that's the right way to think of it, is that when you're thinking about the AI industry, you're primarily asking a question about NVIDIA, and then 1% everything else.
Hey everyone, and Happy New Year. Welcome back to the Scholar AI Founders Pod. Quick reminder to catch us on all the typical podcast locations and find us on our YouTube channel. Shashi, Lakshay, Happy New Year. Excited to get the year rolling. Everybody have a good kind of break into the coming year.
Yeah, pretty good, I think. I think I think inevitably with like the startup stuff, it's very hard to just like mentally shut down. I think like it's very, very hard to just like actually walk away from a thing and just like be mentally absent for a while. But I think my body was very, very happy to just sort of make that happen, where I started a new lifting routine just like a little bit before the new year turned. And it's been like putting my body on like crutches. I slept 12 hours one night, which was crazy, but I absolutely loved it. I'm hoping to have more of that in my life, so we'll see.
2024 was a really eventful year. I'm glad we're getting into it today. And on lifting, yeah, I started lifting kind of tail end of last year, and putting in some 40 plus lean muscle mass effort. So getting there, I added about 15 pounds. I'm going to optimistically say about 10 of that was lean muscle. So let's count that in the win column.
Do y'all do resolutions proper or not?
I used to do resolutions proper, and I realized by the end of January, I was like, none of that's going to happen. So they all end up in the trash. No, I think, I think my attitude is, figure out how to get better and just get better and reach your final form, kind of evolve to your ultimate form, whatever that is. And so that's kind of my trajectory now.
I see. Well, what are the aspirations of the final form for this year, you think? What do you want to improve on?
I want to get my investing into a state where it matches my conviction. I'm kind of distributed in a bunch of index funds, and I'm at the point in my life where I don't want to own a bunch of companies just to be diversified. I want to own a few things that I have a high conviction in. So I'm in the middle of kind of changing that allocation. And then, diet, fitness, health. I rarely drink alcohol anymore. When I do, it's just kind of, a few sips of wine at a nice dinner or something. And so diet, fitness. I'm in the gym, 4 or 5 days a week, and it feels pretty in routine now. It doesn't feel like it's effort to get in. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I'm not a formal resolution person. Not really any particular reason why or why not. Typically, am fairly regimented. But yeah, I mean, if I was setting goals for 25, it would be 7 days a week working out. So historically, I've been 4 to 5. But what I'm finding is that sometimes the consistency dips, and so the hope is that in trying to commit to something every day, that I can kind of show up on a more programmatic routine, and then as a result, I'll work out, closer to the 365 days per year. That said, that sounds a little bit probably more ambitious than it really is. I'm For the sake of this, I'm counting things like basketball or tennis or a day of golf as working out. So it's basically more of a physical activity every day versus actually kind of true working out. And then I'll stick to the same 4 to 5 days per week of actual weight training. So that's going to be the kind of, health plan. I like red wine and whiskey too much to truly give up alcohol, but the diet is certainly going to improve a little bit. I like, in looking back on my food logs and stuff through 24. I don't eat enough fruit, which is not necessarily a thing that surprised me too much, but I just simply don't. I don't really have a good reason for why that is. I like a pretty large diversity of fruits, so I'm not sure exactly why that happens. So a little bit more concentrated effort to get more fruit, and that'll be it. I mean, the thing I'm looking forward to, as far as the most kind of upcoming thing, is the plan is still to currently finish up the PhD and graduate soon. So kind of that'll be the next kind of short term burst that we're looking at, and then kind of we'll see what the rest of 25 brings. Out of curiosity, Lakshya, I'm going to throw it back to you. Looking kind of beyond ourselves, just in retrospect of 2024, what are some of the things that really stood out to you personally, professionally, across the tech ecosystem, etc.
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously, we can start with AI since that's where we kind of live. I think it's been pretty, the way I would reflect on it, it's been pretty interesting to me how generally flat AI felt, I think, in 2024. I think it's like flat doesn't imply like no improvement. There's obviously been a lot of like very gradual change over time, but I think it's pretty interesting to me to just see like the companies that have stood out, the products that have stood out, the sort of progress providers have made has been pretty vanilla almost. I think there was a lot of hype going into 2024. A lot of the VC capital that was being deployed in 2023 was kind of coming to its results. I think in the AI space in particular, I think it just felt like, to me, a lot of the companies and the products that emerged were all pretty plain, did pretty okay. Nothing that felt like a sun moon shot had landed or something really, really far forward. I'll see what that means for 2025 in general, but at least for AI, that's the biggest thing that stands out to me. I know you had poked about it, but we should also talk about like AI wearables since that was a little season that felt so ephemeral, but are suddenly wherever. I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think that AI wearables is something we'll certainly touch on. Josh, just out of curiosity, what do you think? What are your kind of overall reflections on 24, kind of looking externally?
24, I think brought. I'll take maybe a different take than Lexi did. I think there were some AI innovations that made an impact. Cursor and Claude's ability to impact code and write code. It feels quite different now than it did even a year ago. In that there's just a lot less need to write manual code and a lot more expertise that has been developed and is being developed on prompting to write good code. I think that it feels like that has been a change. The O3 preview is really exciting as we kind of bridge from 24 to 25. What O1 did as a step forward, and now OpenAI O3, ChatGPT 4 O3 could be a really interesting step forward. This kind of multi-model router system where you have kind of lots of models, you have prompts that are routed and sub prompts that are routed to different specialized models is clearly going to have big impacts on performance and outcomes for the end user. And I think we're going to see even more of that kind of the value add being realized of chain of thought and reasoning models felt like a significant step in 2024 and more to come in 2025. And then kind of outside of AI, there's lots of interesting stuff to explore. There's the innovation at Tesla and SpaceX, what Elon's been involved with in terms of tech innovation. There's Bitcoin and crypto as an interesting category of exploration. 2024 saw a huge surge in Bitcoin price and forecasts for more Bitcoin price growth next year in 2025. And what MicroStrategy is doing as a levered bet in Bitcoin is a really interesting play. So we can explore that as well.
Yeah, let's hop right in. Let's go to wearables first. What do you what do you think? I mean, do you think that was kind of an ephemeral blip? Do you think that we're gonna see resurgence? Where's your head at there?
I think the sort of conclusions we reached sort of when we were talking about this as they're happening is still kind of true. Like Apple is going to be the category that dominates, like, why would I get a wearable when I have a phone? I do think that there is space to innovate there. I think especially the ones that have me most excited are someone solving smart glasses. Is just waiting for one killer use case. On the more positive side, the Meta smart glasses that they demoed that actually has like in-field view, I was actually kind of stunned it got that far that quickly. I was not expecting to have like an actual like lightweight wearable that looks like a pair of glasses that actually does the job of an AR piece. Humane, Rabbit R1, Friend. I think all those were relatively kind of duds in my eyes, but they're kind of doomed to be just by nature of what they are. But I do think that like hardware for AR tools that have AI embedded, that moved a lot quicker than I'm expecting. I'm kind of hopeful to see. It's all dependent on having a killer use case. I don't think it happens without one, but I'm pretty eager to see like Meta continuing down that line because they made a very, very substantial amount of progress in what felt like a very, very short amount of time for what that tech is. So we'll see. Apple, the Vision Pro kind of landed as a dud. I think Meta right now is the one that has me the most excited for 2025 in general, where they're integrating neural, they're integrating like a light form, like fashionable form factor. They're just very much on the right track, I think, to reveal something pretty cool or more cool updates in 2025.
Sash, any thoughts on wearables directly?
It was great to see Rabbit and Humane Pin try to grow the wearables market and take, I think, important shots on goal. Even though they didn't hit goal, I think it expanded it reminded us what's possible with wearables. That we should have a broad imagination about that. Um, Everybody wants a Jarvis, like we saw in Iron Man, and how we evolve toward that, what's required to evolve toward that in terms of the hardware itself, to be determined. But I think everybody in the wearable space and in the AR space knows that that's out there. Someone's going to get pretty close to that over the next 5 years, and I agree that Meta is a really exciting company, both in the AR VR, the Reality Labs, and also with Llama. I can see a future in which Llama, as a fast follower of OpenAI, does most of what OpenAI does for a fraction of the cost, or free, with a lot more customizability. And just like other tech eras, there are ways that Meta can make a lot of money off of having an open source platform like Llama. And I think they will find ways to realize that. So I think it's a really interesting bet, and it's an interesting time to bet on Meta as a company, both for the AR, VR, the Reality Labs, the core business, and the Llama.
I think that was well covered by both of you. And the only thing I would add is the thing that continues to, I think, intrigue me about the wearables market is, like, as you mentioned, you're competing with the phones that are just so very good. I'm yet to see a use case where it really demands some sort of standalone device beyond phones and watches. The glasses is the most kind of, I think, obvious to me, in that if you can kind of interact with the visual world as we've seen these vision models get better and better, I think there is some room to run. But glasses feels like an intermittent wearable and not something that people are going to have on 24/7, more or less kind of during specific activities and those kind of things. I do wonder if these styles of pendants can overtake them, although to me it feels less likely. Moving on to, I think, other kind of, winners. We saw a lot of kind of investment filter into the infrastructure space, filter into the chip space, NVIDIA being kind of one of the primary winners of 24. Lakshay, as someone who's kind of in the weeds building with these things every day, I'm wondering if you see kind of continuation of that trend. We've seen the largest companies kind of turn their attention to building out data and chip centers. I'm curious how you think that's going to either continue, change, or otherwise in 25.
I think like drilling down from the top, so ignoring the startups, but starting with the providers that are serving these models online, Claude and Anthropic absolutely crushed it in 2024. I think like they stood out to me and completely surprised me, like how much forward progress they can make to the point where like OpenAI is actually getting like highly competed with in like to a very, very impressive capacity by one company. I think, especially given like the reputation that OpenAI has, the backing that OpenAI has, it's very, very impressive to me that Claude managed to be a very, very substantive, like competitive offering, both on the product side, both on the model quality side. For the longest time, Claude 3.5 Sonnet was probably the best model on the market. And still for now, like even for coding use cases, Claude 3.5, just because of its accessibility plus its quality, is just the default option in something like a cursor or otherwise. So that stood out a lot. I think we're seeing a big turn and a big, like a growing emphasis on like where we're getting energy, where we're getting data. And obviously, I think that NVIDIA has been a continuing success story in serving the Gen AI use cases and kind of like riding the AI hype wave and getting their chips sold. And we have seen the emergence of some startups that are some startups that are selling more smaller chipsets that are very, very highly tuned for LLM use cases, like much faster inference, lower use cases. Obviously, we're not in the circumstance where we're using those, but we're seeing the growth of, I guess, what is a business interest in smaller and smaller, more tailored providers in the chip space, which I think is fairly new. because it's increasingly localized, right? It's not that you're selling to one semiconductor factory that has a tool that needs. It is, hey, I have a server I need to run. Maybe I'll go buy this specialized chipset to run my servers on it locally. And that's how I'm going to serve my killer app. So I think trends are going pretty interestingly. I think obviously with more opportunity in the space and a diversification of what are the chips that we need to serve the cases we need to, we'll see a lot more options for where is your data kept. We'll see a lot more options for where do you serve your models from. We'll see a lot more options for like what does local look like. I think that'll be a growing space. I don't think it's hit mainstream really yet for developers, but even for us, we switched to a provider that was serving local GPUs rather than an AWS about a month ago, which is a pretty big step change from what is the big cloud monopolies that kind of exist.
Josh, your thoughts on chip momentum, data centers going up all over the place? What do you think?
There's no end in sight for data center demand. The big model providers, uh, Google, Meta, all the cloud services providers, they all have basically unlimited demand still. What that portends is that NVIDIA will continue to rise and have significant demand, and that all of the data center providers, the specialist data center providers for cooling and wiring and all of those kind of components that need to go into a data center will continue to have significant demand. So I just don't think there's the thing that won in 2024 with data centers will continue to win in 2025. That's how I see that. Any other specialized hardware is niche. I think the only hardware that is worth banking on at this point is NVIDIA and the tensor chips that Google uses internally. But that's an internal use case. They're going to use their own chips. So beyond those, I wouldn't place significant monetary bets on others. Broadcom, AMD, these others sometimes provide important components to the existing data centers, and to that extent, I would say those businesses will continue to do well. And as an investor, if you're looking to get exposure, you might look at these microprocessor indices or ETFs that will help you get exposure to all the semiconductor manufacturers. I don't see fundamentally anything taking the place of NVIDIA. I think that's what it comes down to. Is there was an interesting talk in 2024 by Peter Thiel, and he was asked about the AI industry as a whole, and he said 99% of your question is encompassed by the question, "What do you think of NVIDIA?" And everything else is the 1%. And I think that's the right way to think of it, is that when you're thinking about the AI industry, you're primarily asking a question about NVIDIA, and then 1% everything else.
Yeah, I think my only 2 cents to add really is not much more than what Lexi said, but I think we're going to see local really begin to take strides in 2025. I think we kind of alluded to Apple Intelligence, which we can return to shortly, but I do think that there's more and more push to increase security, increase fast inference, and to be able to run these things for relatively small tasks, kind of on device, kind of on-prem, if you will. So, Lexi, I want to kind of kick it back to you. We're seeing kind of rollouts of updates. Apple Intelligence has kind of sputtered. How do you feel that is kind of, being, I guess, monitored, being kind of accepted or not by the kind of general public? What do you think as far as Apple continuing this on-prem kind of intelligence? We've kind of seen, a little bit of a bust. So curious how that lands with you.
I think it's the correct delivery. I think the problem that they've had with Apple Intelligence is just that the use cases are kind of boring and generally pretty memeable. My favorite set of memes that came out of Apple Intelligence launching was people were getting breakup texts, and like Apple Intelligence was summarizing as like, oh, Courtney wants a pause on time spent with you. We'll consider resuming in like quarter 3 or something. But it's like actually just like this like long gigantic message, which is just like you ruined my life, that sort of thing.
That's awesome.
So it's very funny. I think in general, I do think putting more work to the local model is correct. And I believe Apple Intelligence is doing like a mix. They're using like a mix of cloud and a mix of like local compute to deliver what are their like quote unquote Gen AI experiences. It's just quite boring if right now the case for usage is generate an emoji, summarize a text. It's all pretty vanilla, I think. I think when we see Siri maybe doing more, maybe it'll be a little bit more relevant. But right now, it's the sort of thing where like I have ChatGPT on my phone. I'm not talking with Siri if I need to like work out an idea or chat about like mentally work through something. What I do is I open up the OpenAI app, I open voice mode, and then talk with that thing. Um, so it's not there yet. I think there's a lot of reasons it sputtered, but most of it's just like marketing, branding, like what is the experience you're trying to deliver. I think could have been done a lot better, but the core underlying tech and what they're trying to, I think, is will do well. Hopefully, just in time. They just have to refine it quite a bit.
There's an open question in my mind in that I don't know how Apple can become the industry leader because of their emphasis on privacy here. So like I think that what you touched on, Lakshay, was this consumer default behavior, which has become we use ChatGPT for
Mm-hmm.
things. So even if ChatGPT is powering the thing, there's still this kind of ingrained, behavior where I'm going to that app, I am doing those things there. That to me feels like it could be overcome if there was some kind of elegant way Apple programmed the phone, action buttons, etc., to where it was just kind of launching a Siri sidekick that was basically just a skinned ChatGPT. I think that
Mm-hmm.
can work. What feels almost insurmountable to me is the fact that compared to Google or Meta or some of these other providers, Apple just simply because of their principles or their, competitive advantage, whatever you want to call it, disadvantage in this case, being privacy, I don't know how they compete in that world.
Mm-hmm.
Like Siri is just simply an unhelpful assistant because she can't know that much about you, given kind of the safeguards that are in place on Apple devices. Any reaction to that?
I mean, I think that speaks like just a broader discussion that is emerging about. I mean, we even talked to like a number of like consumers or use cases where like this one user we're talking to would like love like, hey, like I would love if you guys could just provide the thing you had made in like a private setting. Like just let me run it on local because like I'm working with some government or I'm working with some like pharma company or something. And like we just can't have material out on someone else's server. We need to know the exact location of said server. And a lot of this stuff about agentic or a lot of this stuff about like LLM memory all kind of depends on like knowing a lot about the user or knowing a lot about who's at the other end of it or what material they're supposed to be aware of. And on the other side, most of the use cases that are like barricaded that would probably be best served by just like a very simple chat model with very, very simple RAG need high levels of privacy and like a compute system that can support running everything on local. So I think we'll kind of see that contradiction continue to exist. I think it's not just an Apple problem, it's kind of an everywhere problem because everyone is expecting privacy from the apps that they're using these days. Um, so let's see. I don't fault Apple for it. I think it's a contradiction that will like need to be resolved. And I imagine 2025 will see a lot of companies like bracing with that more, especially because these Llama systems are becoming a lot easier to run. Or rather, the model quality is hopefully to the point that like, hey, I can trust Llama models to call tools, which has not been the case for 2024. The moment you allow tool calling, the moment you allow web search in some capacity, the dialogue might shift a little bit.
I do blame Apple for it. I think what we see is what Apple is as a company.
Mhm.
We see what Apple is as a great marketing company. They marketed Apple Intelligence like it was the greatest thing since the wheel. And what are we seeing? Like almost no use cases. Apple has shown us who they are, which is a great marketing company, a great operations company. They can manufacture devices with high reliability, and they're showing us that they're not a very good product company. Fundamentally, that's what we have come to know Apple as, and this is it's the long shadow of one person. They say every company is the long shadow of the leader, and if the leader is Tim Cook, then this is Tim Cook. He's a really great operations cost optimization mind. He is not a great product mind. And as we said on this pod before, Steve Jobs told us this on his deathbed. He said to Walter Isaacson in his autobiography, he said in his biography that Walter Isaacson was writing, he said, Tim Cook is not a product guy. And he knew that. He knew what Apple would become. It would become far more valuable financially. You see, the stock has gone up tremendously since Tim Cook has taken over, but the product isn't very good. And so that's what Apple is. We need to just understand that. The other problem here, Damon, is that the personal use cases versus work use cases are being clearly shown. Right? What are the personal use cases that you would want intelligence features for? Like the breakup text getting summarized to wants to take a break until Q3. Okay, great. But that's really not value added, right? What's value added is cursor. Here's a whole repo of code. I want to add this feature. Update everything for me. That's valuable. Right? That's going to generate downstream financial outcomes for a business. And so what we're seeing is a delineation between personal use cases, which are relatively light and not that valuable, and professional use cases, which could be tremendously valuable.
That kind of segues nicely into another conversation that I think is pertinent here, and that is kind of I think we all in some ways believe we will see a proliferation of agents taking place or taking root in 2025. The retort that I would have to what you just said, Shashi, is that if we do get successful agentic behavior, then personal use cases to me kind of explode into view. And what I mean by that is you have things like book me an Uber, order me food for tonight, plan my trip to Europe, etc. In which, yes, the summarization of a breakup text probably is never going to need some sort of large language model intelligence, but taking these multiple step actions in which you're trying to coordinate dates and times or just offload some of the mental bandwidth, that to me makes sense. I'm curious, throwing that back to you, Shashi, what do you think about that?
I can see a scenario where if you've got a complex set of bookings, let's say you're going on a week or a 2 week vacation, you've got a bunch of hotels, you've got a bunch of flights, you've got a bunch of different events booked, and Apple Intelligence seamlessly helps you plan and navigate that and sets up all the rides for you. I could imagine that kind of scenario. I don't think Apple has articulated any specific use case like that, at least not that I've seen. Right? All I see is dancing people and colors. I don't see Apple saying this is how Apple Intelligence is going to help you in your life. I think Apple needs to first figure out how it's going to use these personalized features. But second, I guess my retort would be, I don't know if Apple will be the one to solve that well. I feel like something else can just get access to your Gmail account and have all of the same information set and be much better programmatically at helping you do all of that than Apple will, or at least will get there first. So I'm not confident in Apple's ability as a product company to get to that feature before somebody else delivers it and delivers it well.
Yeah, I think, and let me agree with that. I think that also opens up a question, which, Lakshay, I want to throw this to you. Do you think there will be some sort of third party provider for these agentic services, or do you think the companies themselves, for example, DoorDash, may simply offer an agent that sits at the interface of whatever device you're running and their app to kind of perform that task for you?
The ultimate problem is that because Apple is so closed on their ecosystem, like even as you guys were talking, it makes a lot of sense that you can imagine you have a DoorDash app. Okay, so maybe let's make it up a hypothetical. Let's say you're some fitness nut who tracks your workouts, you track all your macros, like you order food from Chipotle, whatever, and you want that all kind of coexisting, right? In the circumstance that like Apple Intelligence does like a good job for who that consumer is, you would hopefully like just order Chipotle. It would recognize like based on your like fitness data that you just worked out or something. Maybe it already knows that you just worked out. So plans your Chipotle order and says like, hey, I saw you just worked out and normally get Chipotle. Would you like to confirm it? You confirm it. It logs the macros in your diet tracking app. That all happens automatically, right? But for that to happen, every app needs to have some kind of like SDK basically that reveals what is Apple Intelligence allowed to do to this app. And it's on Apple Intelligence and Apple to provide that as a service at some point. When does that happen? Well, Apple still first needs to make their interface better for interacting with your apps by default. And they already have enough troubles there where, for example, it's Spotify, because they want to kind of compete with their own apps that exist on their platform. They make it really, really hard to do Siri interactions with Spotify. Siri in general kind of sucks. And so it's just all this sort of like mixture of stuff that even if the idea is really, really good, it's ultimately, in the case of iOS, Apple's responsibility to deliver that feature. And it doesn't seem to me like that will happen really, really soon. I think it should happen, but whether or not we get there very much depends on what Apple as a company prioritizes and what their roadmap is.
Yeah, I think overall, well said. I think maybe transitioning from that, let's say back to you. What do you think as far as what successful companies or what successful agentic behavior do you think we will see in 25, if any?
I think we've seen Well, I think the first thing I want to talk about that I don't know if it'll be successful, but I think there's a lot of curiosity in me about is computer use. We've seen a lot of hype around like Claude being able to use the computer, people building startups that's like the LM looks at your screen as if it's a human, like can navigate around. Because we've seen a lot of cases where products are kind of held back by like what is accessible on the internet versus what's not. And that's proven really, really difficult for like scraping. And as scraping and bot use cases and the amount of like automatic crawling of the internet that does happen, um, it just becomes more common. I think we're continuing to see like companies become a lot more guarded about that. And hypothetically, you get around that if my LM or my agent can move the mouse. I don't know how well that'll do. That sounds like it comes with a lot of the privacy concerns that like are packaged into everything we've already talked about. But I think it's a big space of curiosity for me that I know there's a lot of development happening in right now. I think I really want to see like does it get adopted because that's mostly a psychology thing that prevents that from happening, I think. It'll be really interesting to like let people kind of sit with that concept and see how it does in general. I think outside of that, we've continued, as Shasha kind of alluded to, like code has been very, very successful. I think we'll continue to see like more and more coding work is done by an LM system. I've even reached the point where like I don't even like lint my own code. I just tell the agent like run the linting command on loop until you've solved all your problems, basically. I just let it do that thing. I just like sit there pressing a button for 10 minutes, not fixing the thing or not learning the coding language that's in front of me, basically. So I'll continue to do very, very well. I think we'll see more. I don't know about web browsing. I think web browsing has hit like a pretty decent limit on like what it can do just because of the virtue of people blocking websites. But I think with multimodal, I think there's a lot more potential for agents to exist in non-textual spaces. So what agents do with video, what they're able to do with like informational content that's scattered different ways. 11 Labs has been pretty early to providing a video summarization model that's not just summarizing the transcript, but actually summarizing the content of what is in video. And a lot of the information that lives on the internet, a lot of the information that especially younger people consume is in video format. So I think we'll see a lot of innovation there in particular.
So actually, out of curiosity, what I guess two questions, and feel free to take this as in either part that you want. What agentic behavior or what agentic company do you think will be successful? And then if you could request any or have any for yourself, professional or personal use case, what would you kind of wish for?
There are so many really juicy use cases for agents. And this is where we start to use AI as a second brain for us as individuals, and we start to create autonomous processes that exist underneath all of our work to do things for us while we're asleep or while we're not paying attention. There are going to be successful agents for trading, for hedge fund trading, stock trading. There are going to be successful agents for home security, for example, monitoring your cameras, alerting you to certain situations. There are going to be successful agents for helping us do all of the things that are annoying, difficult work that we don't want to be doing or can't be doing at any given time or place. Agents will be able to help with those. And as agents engage across two dimensions, first, plugging into APIs across various infrastructure stacks around the world to take actions on our behalf. Agents are going to get extremely powerful. And then second, into the physical world through robotics. When agents have the ability to plug into robotics, to engage in the world on our behalf or for our benefit through some robotic systems, agents are going to get tremendously powerful. So the question is, when are those things going to happen? What's going to happen first? What are going to be the early green shoots for those things to happen? I would expect in 2025, I would expect specific use cases to emerge where isolated agents can be hugely beneficial. And then as those agents find each other and start being able to work together on your behalf, that's when their value is going to go parabolic.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we've kind of ideated this internally and really kind of looked at some early use cases of this idea of kind of second brain running around the clock trying to surface actionable information, automating away the mundane parts of this information gathering exercise and returning users to the kind of more exciting, more kind of valuable, I suppose, work that they're kind of doing with the aid of these machines. Um, Josh, you mentioned it earlier. Kind of want to turn our attention because it's been so topical lately, and we'll see if that kind of continues to cryptocurrency and kind of how we will see those two things. This to me has always been um, not cryptocurrency itself, but kind of the use of the blockchain has always been fascinating at the intersection of AI, especially when it comes to AI video and image generation becoming so good. I am very curious to see if we have any individuals or companies beginning to leverage the use of blockchain, specifically tokenization of images, of videos, music, kind of any file that might be shared, even text on the internet, such that people can have improved traceability. So, Shashi, to you first. Speculation for crypto, blockchain in 2025. Do you think there's an intersection of AI? Maybe not. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. As we're recording, Bitcoin's price is about 96,000. It started a year ago, beginning of January 2024, at about 44,000, so more than 100% up. There's a company called MicroStrategy which owns, last I looked, about 400,000 Bitcoin, and they are doing something really innovative, which is they're issuing zero interest loans, and they're taking the money from those loans and buying Bitcoin. And so they're creating this highly levered strategy for Bitcoin. Now that could blow up. So if Bitcoin goes down tremendously, they could go down to zero. If Bitcoin goes up tremendously, they're going to go up a multiple of Bitcoin. And they're staging out the loans to buy. I believe the guy's name is Michael Saylor. He's the guy running MicroStrategy. I believe MicroStrategy owns more Bitcoin than anyone. I think they're the single largest owner of Bitcoin, and they're issuing $40 billion of financing to go buy more Bitcoin, essentially. So they're all in. They're fully levered. They're all in on this bet, and will be really interesting to see how this goes. And I think 2025 will show us whether MicroStrategy becomes a giant in the field as Bitcoin goes up, or will blow up, implode on itself, go full supernova as a highly levered bet if Bitcoin drops, let's say, 50%. And I don't know what the threshold is for MicroStrategy to be insolvent, but I know they're getting, I think, essentially zero interest loans. And so it will be interesting to see how cryptocurrency plays into other innovations. I think there are some interesting experiments there, but nothing feels like it's on the cusp of going mainstream and going into broad adoption. So I think really the question is how does Bitcoin perform, and how does MicroStrategy as a levered bet on Bitcoin perform?
Lakshay, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think at least aside from like the obvious like financial levels of like Bitcoin going very, very up, I think it was pretty cool to see that in my perception, I'd label this like the first mainstream consumer use case where we saw with like Polymarket actually using blockchain as an underlying technology. I think going into 2025, what it means for blockchain in general is blockchain is people have been building on it for a very, very long time, but it's never really delivered like end value per se. It's always just been used as a transactionary asset in the form of crypto. And I think, especially since Polymarket just did so well in its context, I think we'll hopefully see just more cases of people adopting blockchain as a underlying tech to serve a simple use case. Don't treat it as like this is a crypto project, this is a blockchain project. Just think of it as this is a product I'm making, and it just so happens that blockchain serves how it's built really well. And I think we'll see a lot more of that, especially since there has been a case in the last year that proved you can reach mainstream with one of these things, and it doesn't have to be that big of a deal, basically. So more of that, I think, will come in 2025. Obviously, I think there's a lot of momentum right now where between AI and crypto, there's a lot of people who kind of move back and forth. And I think those two things also have a very natural relationship, especially as we look at the veracity of the content generated on the internet and trying to tell where it came from. There's a lot of really obvious, like, philosophical ways that we should be applying the surf tech that we have. As to whether it gets there, we'll see. But it seems very organic that we'll see those two things kind of converge or have a more formalized relationship as both of them are kind of riding a hype wave still.
Yeah, I'm going to continue to monitor this space closely, I think, because even in some of the things that we've seen as internet um, privacy as compensation for the people that are actually putting forth the type of content that's going to be crawled by these AI systems becomes more and more a subject of contention. To me, it feels like the natural solution is blockchain. And I actually agree with you, Shashi, completely that we're probably further away from that. And the public consciousness, as far as blockchain and cryptocurrency is going to be concerned, is going to remain Bitcoin and to some degree, maybe Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, some of these other XRP is kind of, growing in popularity, but these kind of other um, you know, more mainstream tokenized forms, specifically kind of the currency. Is it a commodity? Is it an alternative investment vehicle, et cetera? But to me, I am very curious about blockchain kind of overall. Okay, well, in wrapping today, Lexi, I'm going to kick it back to you. Anything that you're specifically looking forward to in 2025 that we haven't covered this far?
I think I'm just generally pretty excited. I think the AI hype wave, like the whole like that curve we will draw of like the high confidence to trough of disillusionment. I think trough of disillusionment's kind of ending a little bit. Like I think like people are beginning to like kind of reach where like here's what this thing can do and should do and what we should be building with it. I think we'll see a lot more. I think we've seen like at best the biggest like consumer product that came out was Perplexity in like the last couple of years. That's been doing really well and continues to do really, really well. And basically LMs, they're doing summary. And if we are going to continue down that path, I think we'll see more people develop really reliable systems that innovate not on what an LM can do, but innovate on what the product can do that has an LM as a piece of it. I think we're reaching a stage where a lot of startups have learned the lessons that they need to try and build something really impressive, I think.
Shashi, what about you?
I'm looking forward to some of these experiments turning into high value at scale production systems. And as we saw with Devon start as an experiment and move toward a high cost product. We've seen Cursor now roll out to be a broadly used product. We've seen applications of Claude. We've seen O1 come out and be high value, and now further reasoning models coming with even more potential value. We see the possibility of agents emerging in 2025. And I think there's just a lot of interesting work being done by small teams in tech in 2025. So I think where the juice is in small, very strong teams doing really interesting work that could emerge into strong mainstream competitors in this year. And it'll be fascinating to see how that all plays out. And I'll just add that Tesla's potentially going to launch an under $30,000 car called the Model Q or something like that. And that looks like a really interesting potential product. As I understand it, they haven't wanted to announce it because they didn't want to undercut sales of the existing cars. But that could also, and Tesla is a huge AI company. They've got more AI data than perhaps anyone based on their road footage. And so Tesla dominating the robotaxi and low-cost car market with autonomous driving could be a tremendous storyline by the end of 2025. So just put that on your watch list.
Damon, you've been interviewing us. What about yourself?
Yeah, no, I think for me, 25, I think you guys captured a lot of it well. I think to me there are two things that I think the public will continue to wake more and more up to, and this is the idea of these systems running when they're not watching the keyboard, which we've already alluded to, right? Are these systems things that I can run overnight? Are they taking actions on my behalf that return information to me when I return to my keyboard in the morning or something else? I also think we're going to see significant progress in terms of pricing. As Shashi alluded to, as we know, these systems are not like traditional software systems in that the more we use them, the more expensive they get. I think that's going to put significant constraints on energy in the form of electricity, chip infrastructure, et cetera. And so I think the public is going to probably become more accustomed to these variable price models, at least in the short term, at least until somebody can figure out how to get these things back in line with pricing of kind of your standard, Netflix subscription or something like that. The consumer expectation has become that what they're paying for is unlimited usage of these systems. They can use these things as much as they want, and the price kind of remains fixed. So I think the open question is that going to continue because someone's going to figure out how to deliver that in a cost-effective manner, or are we going to see kind of consumer sentiment almost reverting back to the earliest days of cell phone plans where we were buying internet subscriptions by the data package or text message kind of packages in tranches? And so I think those are kind of the more interesting things to me. And as far as in the field of AI, I'm still very interested in watching the space of biology. So we saw kind of the explosion of these various models, kind of large language models for chemistry or large language models for biology, trying to predict protein structure or those kind of things. I based on kind of the things I've seen, I think there's some promise there, but I'll continue to watch those closely to see if anything kind of comes of real significance in 2025 and beyond. Excellent. Well, thank you all for watching this week's episode of the Scholar AI Founders Pod. Happy New Year, and we will see you next week for the next episode. See y'all next time.